Hello everyone, we're going to do our best to match the Tekken 8 trailer, so welcome to the Lars primer. You'll like Lars if you enjoy safe poking into crazy burst offense. He can certainly be played with nothing but safe tools, but to really open someone up or get people to slow down, you'll have to take on some risk, especially with his lows. Still, his safer neutral and high damage can normally carry the day. As with our other primers, this video should give you a good quick rundown on the character to jumpstart your learning and get you playing some matches. We will keep the technical lingo to a minimum, but you should still have some knowledge on basic standardized Tekken terms, especially notations and terms for various game mechanics. In other words, this guide is meant for beginners, but you should already know a little bit about the game, just not necessarily the character. If you are brand new to Tekken, check out the resource links in the video description below. I've included several, including a system basics guide that operates as a tutorial for the whole game, since Tekken doesn't really have that built in. To me, I think it's incredibly important to go over that before trying to tackle character specific guides. But enough of all that, let's begin. Okay, first important thing to know with Lars is that he's not a frame oppressive character. Aside from running 3, he doesn't have any easy to use big plus on block moves from neutral. Best you can hope for is 0 or +1 on block with things like down 2. On hit, you're going to look at down back 4 or forward 4-3, but both of which are very risky on block. You'll still use those, but his strength is to stick and move. He has an enormous amount of great pokes that can be used as a backdash or sidestep setup, or even a counter hit setup if they're using slow moves or just disrespecting your advantage. Think jabs, down forward 1, down back 2, and down back 2-1, down 4, down forward 4, back 2, down forward 2, forward 1-2, and even some slower moves like down back 4 for high crushing. And he also doesn't have to take a lot of risk since he has plenty of safe general utility tools like back 1 for homing, up forward 4 for low crushes, and down forward 4 a long range safety poke. So Lars is built around safely poking or making similarly safe reads and then simply moving around to find a punish opportunity. It's not a complex style, but it is remarkably effective. Because of this poke style, you're going to find plenty of opportunities for counter hits. Full crouch down forward 2, back 1+2, forward 1+2, down forward 2-1, and up forward 3 are all really good launch threats to get people thinking twice about pressing buttons, although only full crouch down forward 2 is safe among those. He does have an orbital as well, which is a safe mid jumping launcher. His in particular has great range. Back 4 is a fan favorite, quick, safe mid, chunky damage on hit, but gives a hit throw on counter hit for basically juggle damage. 1-1-1 is also really common since it starts with a normal jab, so it's fast, and it's a heavy hitting knockdown combo that can splat. And if you don't want to risk finishing it, 1-1 is a high mid, so still good as a poke. But 1-1-1 is not the only dangerous poke string. 2-1-3, forward 1-2-3, back 2-1, and while standing 2-1 will launch if the last hits connect counter hit, which makes the beginning hits a lot safer than they seem at first. Forward 1-2 and while standing 2 are also good ways to get to his stances. Speaking of, Lars is never out of range and his stances are a big reason why. He has 2 stances, dynamic entry and silent entry, or Den and Sen. We can't do a super deep dive here, but a couple of general notes. First, to demonstrate the range point, Den alone moves you forward about 2.5 units. The longest Den move has about the same range, meaning if you're within 5 units of your opponent, Den 3 can reach. If you do the Sen transition instead, that adds roughly another 2 units or so of range, and since the second hit of Sen 3+4 hits late and farther out, doing Den to Sen 3+4 literally goes full screen. Because Den can be done manually, it operates best as an approach tool. Den 1-2 is more or less a knockdown splatting jab combo. Den 1+2 is almost as fast and a launcher, so equally good for whiffs and interrupts. Weakness is that it's a high. If things slow down a bit, Den 2 is a safe mid counter hit launcher, great for Oki since it hits grounded. Den 4-3 is the exact same move as forward 4-3, so that's your low threat. The biggest problem is it's by far the slowest Den option, so you have to delay Sen 2 as a mix-up or try to confuse them by going to Sen. Note that Sen has to be transitioned. There's no manual entry. It suffers from a similar problem as Den in that your low threat, Sen 2, is great on paper, but it's also significantly slower than the mids. Delaying Sen moves is also harder because the window is smaller, so how you play Den will largely depend on your style and what you observe from your opponent. Pretty much all Send options are good at catching people from range, but Send 2 will be really strong against highs. Send 4 is good for armoring through strings to get a launch, just be sure to recognize the duck risk. Send 3+4 is a great safe jumping heavy poke string, so you'll see that a lot. Send 1, 3, and down forward 1 are all really good against mindless ducking. Send down forward 1 is also good for setup since it's 0 on block and leaves your opponent in crouch. And to state the obvious, you'll have better luck with Send mix-ups when you land a transition move. Forward 2-1, forward 1-2, down back 2 forward, back 3 forward, and while standing 2 forward are all good for this. At the very least, you have the options necessary to stop most attacks, so you can train them to be patient. That same mindset applies to Den, the main difference being that you can activate it manually and use it as an approach tool. Although there are Den transition moves too, like while standing 2 down, so while standing 2 actually lets you do both. On that note, the last thing we'll mention are his non-stance approach tools. Forward forward 4-3 can absolutely be an approach tool, and paired with forward forward 2, which is the same speed, you have yourself an approach mix-up. Then you have forward forward 1+2, a Lars player favorite, completely safe long-range mid that launches on counter hit. Very good tracking when spaced well, so good to catch people moving around too much at range. But again, don't get too crazy with your risky tools, stick and move, and you'll find plenty of chances for free hits. For defense, first note that Lars is a pretty solid block punisher. His jabs are fairly standard, but he has fast knockdown splatters with forward 2-4 and forward 1+4. He can actually start launching at 14 frames with forward back 2-1, which not all characters can do. Then he has forward 1+2, up forward 3, and down forward 2-1, which are all just slightly slower than that. In crouch, it's a pretty standard fare with while standing 4 as your quick punish, while standing 2-1, which is also quick, but just slightly slower, then your launcher with while standing 1. But many of these are going to be important for your whiff punishing too. We mentioned the stick and move style. Well, if you find a punish window, this is what you'll have. Forward 1+2 is extremely common if you're scrapping at close range, as is forward 2-4 if you need something quicker. At range, note back 3-4, it's too slow to be a regular block punisher, but very good to catch ranged whiffs. Similarly, if you think you have more time, since dash forward 1+2 is kind of tough to do on the fly, keep in mind both forward forward 2 and dash up forward 3 to get your launch punishes at range. Forward back 2-1 also has significant range, it's just tough to do if you're already moving backwards. Otherwise, Lars lives and dies by his crush tools. Up forward 3 is the scary one since it crushes both lows and highs, but it's incredibly risky if it whiffs or gets blocked. Still something you should use now and then to remind them it exists and to see if they can punish it properly. If you're not getting launched for that, it's open season. Up forward 4 is a great low crush as well, much safer but also slower. Down back 4 is a great quick high crush but risky on block. If you want something more pokey but less range, use down back 1-3, and don't forget about ye old toe kick, always good in a jam. He also has evasive counter hit launchers with both back 1+2 and down back 1+2, so very nifty for spacing traps in addition to getting people off of you. And of course you have a singular armor move in neutral with down forward 1+2. A bit lackluster compared to some, but it's still there for use. And that's it. Aside from trying to randomly catch people coming in on you, these are your tools. Just remember that as Lars, you're often going to dominate the ranged game, so don't let people get away with silliness. Although you can get pretty creative with stance options, we've more or less gone over the most important aspects of Lars's game. A few honorable mentions though. Forward 3+4 and down 1+2 are okay lows to do now and then. Forward 3+4 probably more so. They're too slow to abuse, but they do high crush a little bit and give decent reward. They just come with considerable risk. Lars has grabs, but they're not super great, so you can skip those unless your opponent is really bad at breaking them. Also note that Lars actually has a decent crouch game. He has a solid heavy poke low with full crouch down forward 1+2, which sets up nicely for follow-ups. While standing 3 is one of his few block pressure tools, although it is a high, and then of course you have your while standing 2, etc. The biggest issue with doing crouch stuff is that Lars doesn't have a ton of ways to get there outside of just ducking. Down back 4, down back 1, and down 2 are probably most common for that, but don't expect a ton of pressure from those unless they hit, although even that isn't necessarily true with down back 1. As usual, we will skip juggles since those are fairly simple to understand. Check out the link in the video description below for a list of standard combos. So the last thing to mention quick is his rage. He actually has 2 rage drives, one for each stance. First is Den 3+4, which is just a more powerful and less risky version of Den 4. For Sen, you have Sen 1+2, which is a more powerful version of Sen 1. Instead of being unsafe, it actually gives you advantage on block, turning it into a pressure move, and on hit, it's a launcher. This brings us to the end of the primer. I'm hoping this information was succinct and helpful for getting a jump on the character, but feedback is always welcome. Be mindful that in-depth discussion for game plans and move attributes will be saved for intermediate guides, although since we have the more robust basics guides already for Tekken 7, true intermediate guides will be something to look out for with Tekken 8. Lastly, big thanks to our patrons. You guys are the best and that support means more than you know. But to everyone, stay safe and we'll see you next time.